Hello and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall. Welcoming Johnny back with us after a couple of weeks break from the pod. Back again with us to talk about free agency. I feel bad that I've called it Timid Tuesday, Johnny, because it's not really been timid, but it just feels like yesterday was such an explosion, right? But today's just, it's not felt bad, so to speak, but it doesn't feel as explosive as yesterday, right?
I mean, yesterday was just off the charts. I don't think I've known covering free agency that there's been a busy sort of start. Obviously, I think there was around 90 deals that had broken in like the 5 hours from 4 p.m. UK time until I went to bed a bit early yesterday. So yeah, loads happening over the night and into today. There's still some big names left on the board. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what happens over the next few hours. Hopefully something big breaks during the pod and we can have a nice week. But yeah, some big deals to talk about.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yesterday was wild. So as soon as we came on yesterday, the first big thing was the Saquon Barkley deal, which was pretty incredible. But we'll start with running back straight away because the biggest deal of the day and one we saw sort of coming, I suppose, is the deal for Derrick Henry, who has gone to the Baltimore Ravens on a 2-year deal up to 20 million. Again, my eyes are going to be everywhere looking at if anything's coming up, anything's updated. So apologies if I'm side on a little bit tonight. Again, same rules as yesterday. If anything big happens, we'll be thick and fast going through that as well. We're going to sort of start off with running backs today. So yeah, Derrick Henry moving to the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously not the most pleased in the world, given I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Obviously, we'll talk about some of their moves today as well. But the running back who had a rush for 1,167 yards, 12 touchdowns, and had 214 receptions, no touchdowns last season, landing in Baltimore in a team that is very historically good at the run, Johnny. I am quaking my boots a little bit, and it's probably why we've made our move today for Patrick Queen, which again we'll probably talk about in a moment, because we're going to need some defenders to come up against what's arguably one of the best running backs in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you hit the nail on the head that we'd been expecting this deal, I think, for quite a while. I don't know. It just looks so right, Derrick Henry in a Ravens uniform. I can't explain it, but he just seems to suit it already. And like you say, the combination of Henry with the running ability of Lamar Jackson, obviously Keaton Mitchell still there. I know they moved on from Gus Edwards, but Mitchell's a really good supplement as well for Henry. Arguably the Ravens now have the best rushing attack in the league. So yeah, I'm really excited to see Derrick as being, I think, one of our favourite running backs since he entered the league. I know he's just turned 30, which in a very youth heavy league that we're in at the moment is probably a bad sign for running backs, considering he's only signed a 2-year deal. But that's the way the game is at the moment. I am so excited to see Derrick Henry from a neutral, from someone who has nothing riding on the AFC North. Looking forward to seeing what he can do this year. Brilliant deal, I think, for both parties.
Yeah, it's definitely, I know age isn't on his side, and he's definitely, when you say Derrick Henry's lost a step, he's not lost that much of a step, but he's definitely not what he was maybe 3 years ago. But this for me is such a win now move. This is, Ravens in touching distance for a fair few years. And well, I say it's just a fair few years. They haven't been because they've had really bad injuries last few years. But we said this year, if this team, this franchise, this squad hadn't had the injury woes that it had in the last 3 seasons, they'd be a playoff team every year, and in the AFC Championship conversation every year. So hopefully keeping everyone fit now with Derrick Henry there and keeping him fit as well, this team can really push on and make a go for the AFC Championship. I think they think this is their window. I think they look at it that the Chiefs, the Bills have been there, are all beatable teams for them. They definitely were a hot favorite last year to go and win the Super Bowl. Obviously falling short, but yeah, this is a huge move. I mean, it really, AFC North has just had so many moves in the last 24 hours, 48 hours. I mean, another move that we can talk about is this Bengals releasing Joe Mixon, only for them to not release him and actually trade him to the who have they traded him to?
The Texans.
The Texans, yeah, which they've not, because the new league season starts next tomorrow. We don't know the details of that yet. They signed a running back yesterday, I feel like, the Bengals. Where have I lost it?
Yeah, they signed Zach Moss yesterday, who again,
yes, they signed Zach Moss on a 2-year deal for $8 million. Released Joe Mixon, not released Joe Mixon, and now traded him to the Texans.
Yeah, it's I suppose it's strange from looking with like fancy heads on and knowing how crucial and how productive Mixon has been. I think it was a little bit of rumours, I think, last season about whether or not Mixon would be cut from the Bengals. So I think now sort of makes sense, and purely from a business sort of point of view, the Bengals are comfortable moving towards Zach Moss for saving a lot of money. They've obviously lost, and their whole offense is going to look very different next year, especially if T. Higgins moves on. But yeah, I think it's a sign of the times. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Mixon can do in Houston. They have been linked over the last 24 hours with, the big guns like Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. So to land someone like Joe Mixon, who I think you would still put in, the top 15, maybe even the top 10 running backs in the league at the end of last season, I think they will. They'll be really pleased having lost, Devin Singletary, who was really productive last year. Yeah, look forward to seeing what he can do, but it's again the churn of running backs, and it's all about just saving money. So I can understand it from all parties, really.
Yeah, I mean, Mixon last year was a rush for 1,034 yards, 9 touchdowns, and then receiving wise had I'm completely losing his yards, 376 yards and 3 touchdowns. And you're right, the Bengals offense now looks very different because T. Higgins has been franchise tag and has requested a trade. They might not be bringing Tyler Boyd back. It feels like it's just Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I mean, that is not a bad combo to have. Any team would take that combo. But yeah, from a Steelers fan point of view, you look at the Ravens who have just reinforced, and it seems like the Bengals are actually depleting. I mean, it's a weird move. I mean, they have brought in Zach Moss, admittedly, who was decent last year at the Colts. Really, I mean, he outplayed and kept out for the most part. I know he was not starting the year, Jonathan Taylor. But Zach Moss, I mean, he rushed for 794 yards, 5 touchdowns, and had 192 yards and 2 touchdowns on the receiving. And he was very admirable in his get-go at the Colts, wasn't he? I mean, he's a pretty decent addition. But do you think he's better than Joe Mixon? Do you think he's going to be a bit more? I think it's very like for like, personally.
Yeah, I think Zach Moss isn't, as young as I think. I think he's probably about mid-20s. So there's not, a huge amount of difference.
26.
He's 26, and Joe Mixon is I think maybe a year older than him. So I suppose it seems a strangest sort of move. Moss, like you said, was very productive in parts last year, and he's been given the reins. I think the Bengals will probably go after another running back, maybe in the draft, to bolster that. But I think it's just a purely business-like move, like you say. The amount that they're paying for Moss, than I think what they would have had to pay this year for Mixon is a bit of pittance, which they can probably use to address bits elsewhere. But yeah, like they said, there's a lot of changes in Cincinnati, mainly like for like. I think at this point, Mike Gesicki has also been a name which I've seen today. He's joined, and he's, I suppose, I think Irv Smith was their tight end last year. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was. He's just gone to somewhere else though, but I can't remember where.
It just changes, isn't it, at the moment? But like I say, yeah, not like a huge statement of a signing, but yeah, I think the Bengals are probably just looking to use their capital elsewhere, given obviously they re-signed Joe Burrow, and probably if they want to keep Higgins around, I'm not sure that's going to be the case, but they might need to find some money to do that.
as we've said before, make sure you have a comment on this video with the stuff we're talking about and maybe some of the moves that you think may continue to happen. Sticking on running backs, we had through the night, we had Gus Edwards signed with the Chargers on a 2-year deal. Devin Singletary signed with the Chargers on a 3-year deal, 16.5 million. And we also had Austin Eckler go to the Washington Commanders on a 2-year deal. Aaron Jones, who we announced on the pod last night, was being released by the Packers. That was live with Adam, and make sure you check out yesterday's video for his reaction of them getting Josh Jacobs and then releasing Aaron Jones. He signed a 1-year, $7 million deal with the Packers' rivals, Minnesota Vikings. I mean, out of the ones we've just said there, I mean, the Austin Eckler one's interesting because I feel like Eckler, I don't know, he feels like sometimes he doesn't get his flowers in this league. You know, he's been more consistent and better than people like Saquon Barkley for the last few years because of how Barkley's injuries. I know Eckler has also had his injury woes, but you know, how much does it make this Washington offense more dynamic having someone like him in? Because they've still got Brian Robinson on the roster as well. They did lose Antonio Gibson; he's gone elsewhere. But I mean, this is a big piece for them to get, isn't it? He's really dynamic.
Yeah, I think so. I think Austin Eckler, unfortunately, had a pretty poor year in 2023, but he is, I think, probably him and McCaffrey are probably the best receiving running backs in the NFL today. And I think, when he's healthy, we know how much value he can have across the park, especially in the running game, the passing game, which I mentioned. So, yeah, I think this is a really good move for the Commanders. Eckler, I think on his day, like you say, is one of the premier running backs. I think he was probably the premier running back going into that last season. So they've managed to get him on what I would think is a relatively cheap deal for someone. I mean, I think it's a 2-year deal worth up to around 12 million. Is that right? Which for a name like Austin Eckler probably isn't as much if he can hit his prime. So. I think I saw something. He obviously Anthony Lynn, I think, was one of his coaches in at the Chargers. So reunited with him. He's the running back coach in Washington. So hopefully that can help Austin get back to his better days. But yeah, really good deal from the Commanders. They've had a really busy 24 hours or so. Just looking to build around. I know obviously they've signed a new quarterback as well, which makes it very interesting to see what they do in the draft. I think they'll have obviously Howell and Mariota. It was Mariota, wasn't it? Who sounded not my name from there. Interesting to see what they do. I think is Sam Howell on the way out. I'm not sure if all three would stay, but yeah, I've seen strange things happen.
Yeah, the Chargers for the Chargers last year, Eckler had 14 games, 628 yards, 5 touchdowns, but it's his receiving capabilities where he caught 51 targets, 436 yards and a touchdown. I mean, it's not great viewing for that last season, but the Chargers weren't great viewing last season. He was injured, but he's 28 years old, but he brings experience to his Commanders team, and he's certainly a player that can definitely make them more diverse and have a bit more of a feather in their cap. Aaron Jones going to the Vikings is an interesting move. I mean, again, I think it's the pass catching ability for him is what people like, but obviously the injury woes are there as well. Only a 1-year deal, $7 million. I mean, I think it's pretty decent business, really, by the Vikings just to get him on a year deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when the Packers signed, obviously you covered it yesterday, signed Josh Jacobs, I was completely shocked because we know how much of a fan favorite and how liked and vital Aaron Jones has been for when healthy for the Packers team. So I think this was obviously inevitable, his release, and to end up at a divisional round, I think makes it one of the more spicier moves of the day. But yeah, he's a veteran quarterback who's got so much experience. Yes, he's probably approaching 30, but I'm sure when healthy, he's going to be so highly impactful for the Vikings, who obviously have a big void at running back to fill after releasing Mattison earlier in the off season. Cheap as well. I think this team has struggled with the run, you could say, in the last probably the last couple of years. Dalvin Cook wasn't great in his final year in Minnesota. I think adding someone like Aaron Jones who can complement. I know they've got a couple of youngsters as well coming through. I think this is a great move all around. And I'm sure Jones will probably have a chip on his shoulder as well because of the release. When we saw just a couple of months ago how crucial he was, I think, in the Packers beating the Cowboys in the playoffs, and to see his release is just such a shame just a couple of months on. So the spicy first meeting between the Packers and the Vikings, I'm sure, will be one to watch out for.
There's going to be a lot of them meetings this year where they return to the place they once were. Saquon Barkley won a lot of running backs for maybe doing that this season. Let's move on to the one of the trades that happened through the night. Again, not been finalised just yet, and that is the trade for Brian Burns going to the New York Giants. We don't know. I don't believe the details that have been released yet. That will be probably confirmed tomorrow at the start of the new league year. Burns, who's been at the Carolina Panthers now since 2019, a total of 13 passes defended, 8 forced fumbles, 46 sacks, 151 solo tackles, 59 tackles for loss, 95 quarterback hits. This is all subject from Pro Football Reference. At 25 years old, when you look at this now, Johnny, going over to the Giants, it would be interesting to see what they've given up, because they were asking for first-round picks last year for Brian Burns. It never happened. I suspect they've not got a first-round pick for him this season.
So from what I've seen, they are giving up a 2024 second-round pick this year, and then I think a fifth-round next year. So, compared to what they were asking for just a year ago, is that's I mean, for the Panthers, this trade must be, they're obviously the worst, or one of the worst teams in the NFL at the moment, and trading away, one of their big blue chip players for such a small return compared to what they would have done is that's. It's not going to be pleasing for the fan base. Not going to be pleasing for the roster, and yet they're rebuilding as well. But for the Giants, this is a real win. This trade, because of how little they gave up. I know they received a 2024. A second round pick for this year's draft by giving up Leonard Williams, and have managed to turn that basically into Brian Burns. So a huge upgrade for someone who's very, very young. Partner him with Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence. That makes the Giants have one of, if not the best pass or young pass rushing teams in the NFL. So I've seen obviously question marks on the amount Burns has been given, particularly on the back of a poor year for him, and that's obviously been seen in the trade compensation. But he's got a fair whack for this move. But I still think this is probably an A plus deal for the Giants, because it makes them such a better team. They're obviously very, very weak, particularly on offense, but now their defensive unit is looking very, very sharp, and I think that's just a deal that they needed after losing Saquon yesterday.
Yeah, it does feel like some of these moves that have been made, obviously I don't think they are reactionary, but they do make sense. Like, you lose Barkley yesterday, he goes to a division rival. You think, well, we know what he's about. He's going to a division rival. The Cowboys, such a high power offense last year. The Cowboys adding Austin Eckler, I don't know timing wise out, but then you bring in someone, Brian Burns, to reinforce that already pretty decent pass rush as it is. And like you said, young as well. Got one of the best defensive tackles in the league in Dexter Lawrence, and a really good up and coming edge rusher in Thibodeau. And you add a 25-year-old Brian Burns, you're going to get at least 3 to 4 years out of him. I can imagine he's going to be, I'm not sure deal-wise where he's at with his contract. They may need to renew soon.
So he just signed. I think it's worth around $30 million a year. It's somewhere in the region of around 150 million for the for the junction. So a lot of, but yeah.
We'll stick on the edge rushers because it's not someone who's signed, unfortunately. I thought he may have signed for a minute, but it hasn't. But sources say that the 49ers ex-pass rusher Chase Young, formerly number 2 overall pick in the draft, has added Titans visit to his schedule. Tom Pelissero reported he'll visit the Panthers and Saints first. That's per Ian Rappaport a couple of minutes ago. Again, another one, a premium pass rusher. Well, I say premium. I think he's premium. I think Chase Young is still a very, very, very good edge rusher. And I think he showed that when he went to the 49ers. And it'll be interesting if the Panthers lose Brian Burns to then bring in Chase Young, probably at a more discounted rate, I can imagine. The Saints, always a team with good defense, always looking to add people. I don't think Chase Young's a particular player that I think for him, it doesn't seem that attractive going there. And also, they seem to be a team that does add via the draft. The Titans just does make a lot of sense as well. They're a team that always adds and rotates in edge rushers as well. Out of the 3 teams, where would you like to see him go?
I think the Titans is a really interesting one, to be honest, because, like you say, obviously they've got Jeffrey Simmons down the middle, but yeah, I like you said, they're a very rotational side on defense. So Chase Young can come in and be that main guy and rediscover the form that we saw him produce in college, and probably in the first year he was at Washington, injury concerns have always hampered him. But I think that's a really attractive place to come. They're building a bit of an ethos in Tennessee. I see them now as a really rebuilding team who are probably targeting the draft, but if they can pick up, someone like Chase Young, who is, it's probably only 20, 23, 24, still got a lot of development to do. I think that would be a good move, I think, for all parties.
Yeah, Chase Young, 24. Last year, last year had 5 sacks. I mean, he did. It's so tough, isn't it? Because he was in such a good team in Commanders like that. That defense had so much promise, and he was sort of the focal point, the cornerstone of that, along with him, Montez Sweat, Josh Allen, and Montez Sweat now in Chicago. Chase Young released by them, and he was traded or released? I can't remember. He was traded, wasn't he, for the 49ers? It's tough. I think he's a really premium guy. I mean, I would have loved to see. It was lots of rumors last year that he was going to go to the Steelers, and I was really pleased about that. But I'd argue that we didn't need him. But then he went to the 49ers that didn't really need him, but they needed depth, and I think the Steelers need that as well. So it's whether he wants to be the premier guy on a team or a guy that rotates in and out. And I think that's a tough call to make, really. So we'll talk briefly. Well, no, we won't talk briefly because it's my team. So we're going to talk about it a lot. In the last few minutes, last hour or so, Patrick Queen, former middle linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens, has signed a 3-year deal, $41 million with my Pittsburgh Steelers. Very, very happy with that. Some people already are saying Pittsburgh Steelers have won free agency, getting in Russell Wilson for $1 million on the, it's $1 million on the dollar, isn't it? I mean, it's pounds to pennies. And now bringing in Patrick Queen in a position that the Steelers were absolutely desperate for. We brought in Cole Holcomb. We had Quan Alexander last year as well. And we had lots of injuries there. I mean, I am stoked to get Patrick Queen. I think for me being a defensive guy, I love defensive players and I love defensive plays. I'm more pumped about this, and obviously being a Steelers fan, I'm very much more pumped about this than I am about some of the other moves that happened in free agency. I think he's brilliant. I think he's everything that we wanted Devin Bush to be in that middle linebacker position, who obviously did get released and then went to the Seahawks. So I'm so stoked about this. Another great addition for the Steelers. I truly think this team is just a couple of moves away. These 2 moves away, a quarterback and someone in the middle linebacker position to challenging for a good playoff run now.
Yeah, a huge move, I think, for Patrick Queen. Just from looking on social media, so much of the Ravens fan base and his ex-teammates as well have expressed, disappointment that he's not coming back to Baltimore. I think until last year, he's probably a name that was living on his draft expectation. Probably hadn't hit the heights until Roquan Smith had joined, but since then he's come into a world of his own. And obviously the uniqueness of McDonald's defense in Baltimore last year probably aided those two middle linebackers, but it's a huge void that the Steelers needed to fill. I know Holcomb's had his injury issues. You mentioned Alexander as well. So yeah, this was a huge position of need, and they've probably signed the best player in that position, who is, I think, still incredibly young. 24, coming off his best season, and signing him to a long multi-year deal. I think it's a great piece of business for the Steelers, and like you say, they're having a really good few days, and like many others in this transfer period, stealing your divisional rivals, one of the divisional rivals' top players, must be very satisfying.
Incredibly satisfying. I mean, like you said, he maybe has not lived up to the billing of. I mean, he was part of that LSU defense, which is considered that LSU team is considered one of the best college teams ever. Like, he was billed so highly because of that LSU college defense and team in general. I just think the Steelers, what we've lacked in the last 6 years is a Fred Warner type character on the defense. I'm not saying that TJ Watt isn't that leader, but I mean that Mike guy, that middle linebacker, that eyes all over the field sort of player. And I think that's exactly what you get in Patrick Queen. You get fast, you get versatile, you get side to sideline type speed, and the experience he now brings, and the insight he now brings again with coming up against Ravens twice a season. It's going to be useful having him in the building. So yeah, I'm really pleased. There's lots of rumors that we're in on Justin Simmons as well. So if our free agency is Russell Wilson, Justin Simmons, and Patrick Queen, I'm fine with that. I'll run to the bank with that. We don't need to do any more business after we do that. I know it's
good return.
It is good, especially with how cheap Russell Wilson's been. How cheap this deal for him is. I think this is a big push for us. And like I said, this is the sort of move that is the big push. Just like Henry going to the Ravens, just like Barkley going to the Eagles. This is the one where they go, we are. I know the Eagles have made all-in moves anyway, because they are all-in, because they are that good. So it's certainly going to be exciting. Unfortunately, I mean, we have had a very, very quiet show. There is nothing happened because there's only two of us. We're not going to do the full 45 minutes today because it is a lot for two people to talk for 45 minutes. And of course, it's nice to have everybody else's opinion as well on the show. But Johnny, I mean, one final look maybe at who is still out there. Let's have a little look, because we talked about the top 10. We're not going to go through all of them, but obviously this is whittled down a lot. And we've not had you on, so we'll talk about the people that are in the top 10 that are remaining. So Danielle Hunter being number 3, Tyron Smith at number 4, the offensive lineman, Calvin Ridley at number 7, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, safety, 26-year-old at 10. That's the who is left of the top 10. What was the original article of NFL.com. What do you think to these 4 players? Do you think there's anywhere particularly they're going to want to go? I mean, the point that we made prior to free agency starting is Tyron Smith's probably going to be looking for money. Danielle Hunter as well is probably cashing in on one of his best season he's ever had last season. Calvin Ridley came back and did a prove it year with the Jags and proved it, in my view. And then CD Deuce, as he's most commonly called by a lot of people, has proved that he can work it out, and he's a really, really good safety.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise around Calvin Ridley. He's one of the first mentioned around him picking between Jacksonville and the New England Patriots, which I think is an interesting one, because I think it seems like he wants to stay in Jacksonville, but obviously they've given a decent bit of money to Gabe Davis. They've got Christian Kirk, Davis, and then Ridley. I mean, that's a very solid room for Jacksonville, but probably isn't. They don't have that. Not saying that Calvin Ridley's not turned back into, but he probably hasn't hit the heights yet. It's only a year into his return from his suspension, but didn't really hit the heights I think we probably all expected, which is probably why the Jags have let him hit free agency yet. So that's an interesting one. Obviously, Hunter as well. Will be going after a lot of money, which is why the Vikings, probably didn't want to keep hold of him and were looking for a bit of a cheaper option elsewhere. There was a bit of noise around him even going to Atlanta as well. I think the Texans are in for him. There's a lot of plays up for grabs. I'm a Jets fan, and we've done next to nothing so far. I would like us to have made a move for Calvin Ridley. I think he'd be a good number 2 for us, but I think that ship has sailed. There's a couple of tackles and linemen still on the board. You mentioned Smith from the Cowboys. Really interesting where he goes, because again, he can fill a really big void for a lot of teams. Kevin Zietler as well. He's been linked with a move to the Jets. Another one who's probably in his mid-30s, looking to cash in after a decent year in Baltimore. So plenty of names still available. It's going to be interesting to see which dominoes fall next.
Certainly some dominoes to fall for sure. Apologies, but it's not been as lively a show this evening as yesterday, because nothing's really happened since we've been on. That's not your fault, Johnny. That's not my fault. It's just nothing's happened. It's just gone quiet out there in the NFL world. Maybe there's some rumblings. Maybe in the next hour we're going to get it all popping off again. I don't know. But we'll be back tomorrow potentially with more free agency news. Let's just see how tonight goes into tomorrow. If it all quietens down, I don't think we probably will. But hopefully this pace will keep ramping up. So hopefully it will do. Thank you, Johnny, for joining me. And thank you guys for watching or listening. And we'll see you all again